welcome to another episode of the Burning Out Bush podcast. As always, I am one of your hosts, Josh Moyer, and this is...
Hey, I'm Rick Grace. Good to be with you.
Yes, the second in command. Just kidding. We are incredibly excited for this episode today, and we hope that you are too. We're going to talk about a subject that, unfortunately, or I don't know how you look at it, but it's something that we all deal with, being a part of the church, and we wanted someone to come along on this journey with us as we talk about that. So we have a very special guest with us. He's going to join us right off the bat. No kind of going in and out, but Phil Brookman from Memorial Road Church of Christ in Oklahoma City is with us, and we are so happy you are here. He's starting off the episode with us, so he's listening to all this stuff, so he's probably thinking, what did I get myself into? But man, Phil, we are so incredibly thankful that you chose to be on here with us this day, man. So we really appreciate it. So,
wait, we're talking about church hurt? I thought we were talking about shirts, like t-shirt.
Yeah.
Oh no.
So I hope you're ready. We're gonna get into some interesting questions today, and it's gonna make for a really good topic of discussion, I believe. So,
although church shirts is a good topic too. I'm thinking like Sunday Cool, they're kind of high up there, but
that's right. Hey, we're getting such with the times. We actually found some pullovers laying around here at the church, and we got the League Street logo on them, and so we actually do have some church shirts.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Apparently, our youth minister got his from the clothing room.
Yes,
which is pretty funny. That's very on brand.
So we hired a youth minister, shout out Nathan Dillinger. And of course, guys that are green as grass, they come in, they're wearing Crocs, short shorts, and a t-shirt. And we're looking at him like, all right, buddy, it's time to dress you like a minister. So instead of buying clothes like normal people does, he just went to our clothing room and found some things with collars on. It's kind of funny. So
it's beautiful.
It was good stuff. But Phil, tell us about yourself. Where are you from? I mentioned that you're at Memorial Road, but you can go in a little deeper on that if you want. And kind of give us how'd you get into ministry journey thing, since that's what we really talk about on this show is just our ministry journeys and what we face. So take it away, brother.
So I've been in ministry 20 years at the Memorial Road Church of Christ, and the first 7 of that was youth ministry. And I still love youth ministry. I never necessarily wanted to get out of that. But 13 years ago, the guy that was the preacher at my church, he still loved ministry, but he was a little burned out of the preaching part. And so the elders made kind of took his role and created 2 positions out of it, the executive minister, and then they were looking to hire a young guy to come preached alongside, and so that was me. And so I started doing that 13 years ago. So there's, like all ministers, there's been really great stories of wonderful things God is doing and lots of hard things along the way. But I still feel committed to the call to preach the gospel and to love the church. As far as how I got into it, I've got one of those very simple but a little odd stories. I'm 15 years old, at somebody's house for a Wednesday night Bible study. Don't remember the topic, don't remember the teacher. But I walk out of the house, look up at the sky, and I get this overwhelming sense from the Lord that I am going to be a minister. I remember it as clear as day. So that I didn't know what kind or how long or anything like that, but because before that day, I wanted to be an architect. But something changed in my heart that day. And so I just decided I'm going to go into ministry. And I didn't really have any skills. I didn't have a lot of knowledge. I just knew that I thought the Bible was really interesting, and I loved people. And so I went into college with no plan B, and I started out in youth ministry and then been preaching ever since.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Yeah. So you had that title, executive minister.
Oh my
and I
goodness.
thought Rick's probably going to make a joke about this, because every single day we come to work and he goes, "Hello, executive global senior pastor." That's what he calls me all the time.
When he acts like it, he's going to get the title. So,
so I kind of, when you said that he got the executive minister, I was like, no, I like to mess with Rick, but man, that's awesome. I got to tell you, of course, everyone that's a part of the church, most are going to know who you are. You're in front of everyone, even beyond Memorial Road, but Man, I've always just loved your preaching style. You are a mind-bending machine, and every time I listen to you, I'm like, man, I come with passion and stuff, but man, I just love the kind of deep twists and turns. Like listening to some of your lessons is like those movies that something crazy is getting ready to happen, but you just can't imagine the twist, and you always twist it in such a way you're like, it's like you heisted my mind or something. So I've always appreciated that. The way that you speak is just amazing. But I do have a story about Phil.
Uh-oh.
I do. So this is how me and Phil kind of met for the first time. I'm preaching my first preaching job in Oklahoma, Holdenville, Oklahoma. And shout out Holdenville. Miss you guys a lot. And in small church culture, you're kind of used to getting guys around the area that'll come and do little area-wide teen gatherings, or we call them Netsis Days here in northeast Texas. But I thought, man, you know what? We hear the same guys over and over, and so I thought, who could I just call that I don't know, that I want to just build a rapport with, have a connection with, and I had just got done watching a sermon that you did somewhere. I don't think it was Memorial Road, but I thought, you know what? I'm just going to reach out to this guy and see what happens. And I'm thinking, I'm in Holdenville, Oklahoma. We're not going to have but maybe 80, 90, 100 teenagers there for this area wide, but I'm going to find out. And I can't remember how, but we got in connection, and I was like, do you want to come to Holdenville and do an area wide for a bunch of country kids? And to my surprise, Phil said yes. And that has always been just a great moment. Like I thought, man, this is really cool because sometimes like in the church, and I don't know if you guys agree with this, but when you're a part of something that is perceived to be, big, and Memorial Road's fairly good sized church, right? You're like, man, but Phil's always been humble, and I really appreciate about you. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So,
I remember that super fondly.
This morning.
My dad grew up in Western Oklahoma, and then he worked his whole career for the OSBI, the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation.
Yeah.
And a lot of what he did is he just drove around the state investigating crime labs and all sorts of interesting things. But he came to really, really like just going to different counties in Oklahoma. Like he prides himself, like he doesn't need any GPS, nothing. He just knows the state. And so he got to come along with me for that. And he was so excited. Remember. As we drove out through all the counties, he was telling me all these stories. So it was a big blessing to me too, to get to come do that.
Yeah. It was, I remember your dad being there. That was really, really cool. And man, I'll tell you, it's like, I've noticed this, like when my parents, because they'll come to anywhere I've ever been, man. My first preaching stop was in Wyoming, and my parents would drive up there 5 times a year to come see us. But there's always that twinkle in your parents' eyes when they're watching you up in the pulpit. One, probably because if they're like my dad, they're like, how in the world did I raise a preacher, But man, your dad, the way he was watching you, I kind of watched your dad as much as I was watching you that night. But anyway, but we're glad that you're here. You want to just jump right into it? Well,
yeah.
Let's just jump into the topic of church hurt.
Sure.
I suspect this might be our most watched once we post it, because it is it's one of those topics. So.
Yep. Josh and I notoriously are bad cop, good cop a lot of times, and that might come out in this one as well. We're just very different people, which is one of our strengths as a team, is we see things differently and work together well. But so church hurt it's a loaded statement, loaded phrase, I guess, and people have a lot of different responses to it. So Phil, when people say church hurt, what do you think they actually mean, and where do you think we sometimes misunderstand it?
Mm-hmm. Well, I first want to qualify that I'm not an expert on this. Yeah. My knowledge base mainly comes from walking with people over the years that have experienced church hurt and learning. I've learned a lot from their stories. So just know that I'm not like the guru or anything, but I think church hurt is a real phenomenon. I think it's not talked about enough. quite a few people go through it. When it comes to defining it, it does strike me as a pretty large umbrella word under which a lot of different variants and categories could emerge. I almost equate it to maybe on the positive side of things, that, how generic the word love is in the English language, but when you dive into it in the Greek, it's like, oh wait, there's a lot more specificity of different kinds of love. Or the word trauma lately, it's almost become overused. So I heard an expert recently talking. She did some study on, it was a teenage culture study, and she learned that at least with the group she studied, teenagers, their number one category by which they will define their identity to new people is mental health. So, rather than, stereotypically, it might be, hey, I'm so-and-so and I play the flute, or hey, I'm so-and-so and I run track, or, whatever. They primarily identify as, I'm so-and-so and I'm bipolar, or I'm so-and-so and I have anxiety and depression. Wow. And I can't remember the expert that was talking about this, but she said it's actually overall a very negative thing that this is happening for two reasons. One is it really narrows the teenager's view of themselves to have this one very narrow lens by which they're viewing their whole humanity. That's not necessarily helpful. But then two, some of these teens are saying these things and they're not really struggling with it. They just feel like they have to. Yeah. And so that actually does a disservice to the teenagers that are actually struggling with mental health. Mm-hmm. They're not getting the help they need because everybody's claiming that. So that's an aside to say, I think there's something similar going on with church hurt where, someone could, like, the preacher didn't remember my name. Oh, that's church hurt. But then someone else, I was sadly sexually abused by so-and-so in the children's wing 20 years ago. I'm just saying this generic story. Yeah. Well, if both of those are identified as church hurt, wow, that term needs very much clearer definition. So I think it's an umbrella word. It's absolutely real. We need to talk about it. But I think there are some helpful ways to bring clarity to the term.
Oh, I absolutely agree. It is. He just said the word. I was thinking it is very broad. I mean, it's. Yep. And I guess as ministers too, we probably see that broadness of it a little more than maybe your typical congregant, or just because we're just exposed to kind of everyone's problems, But I will say, Rick mentioned right off the bat that we are kind of yin and yang in this, and I typically am, just being honest, I'm typically the rub some dirt on it kind of guy, and I want to like polish my edges a little bit on this. So this is gonna be.
I want you to polish your edges too.
He wants me to polish my edges because I don't know. We're kind of a product of how we were raised, and I came from the put some dirt on it culture, I guess, or that time, if you will.
And I was an only child.
And he was an only child, so take that for what it's worth, listeners or watchers.
All right.
So, but no, I agree with you, Rick. You got anything on it?
I think that's really good. We almost need a new term or something to separate, or more terms. But that's definitely the reality. Is there's so many people who come to the place of identifying or labeling themselves as being hurt by the church, and we talked about this quite a bit. But personally, I want to hear people's stories. I want to engage with them and have empathy. And even if it is the preacher forgot my name, and I mean, if we're being honest, I'm sure all of us could talk about times we've been hurt by people in the church, and so not saying that it's okay, just saying that, I mean, even the simple stuff that's not that big of a deal, I think we need to address more, not in the sense of making it better necessarily. I mean, we should, let's learn people's names and not be a jerk to each other. However, just recognizing that we're still human, and if we're expecting anybody in the church to be perfect, it's just not going to happen.
Right. Yeah. No, you're exactly right.
I actually have, I'm sure other people have better lists than this, but I have adopted some clarifying words just to know what are we really talking about. Yeah. So the first distinction I think is important to make is there's a difference between church hurt and church irritation. So Church irritation it is, okay, the preacher forgot my name, or I got an email a few days ago from there was a family that was traveling and they came to church and no one greeted them, which is, so, I hate that because we try really hard. We're always talking to our members about, you're the first, line of welcome for newcomers, but, it still happens. And so this person was not happy. Nobody greeted me. That's terrible. Okay, well, I wouldn't classify that as church hurt. That's right. Yeah, I'd be irritated too. Or even today, there's a situation going on where I don't see eye to eye with someone else in leadership. Well, I'm irritated, but that's not church hurt. Whereas, I have a friend that, maybe 2 years ago, he was telling me that his dad recently died. And I said, I'm so sorry to hear that. And he said, well, it's worse than that. He said, before he died, his dad was a preacher. He said, it came to light that when I was a child, my dad had actually abused several kids at churches I was growing up at. And this all came to light. And then he died. And now I don't know how I feel about God. I don't know how I feel about the church. And everything's kind of up in arms in my own faith. And well, I empathetically, I get that. Like if someone that close to you, your dad, did something that was that harmful, that is legitimate church hurt. I have another friend who a few weeks ago, he just moved here and he said that he had a preacher that had his baby was having some major surgery, and the preacher had called and said, I'm going to be there to pray, and the preacher didn't show up. And that's one thing, but then as my friend reached back out a few times to this preacher, and the preacher just kind of ghosted him. Yeah. But that's painful. So I would think that's church hurt as well. And even to clarify terms even further, I think there's a difference between direct church hurt and indirect church hurt.
Yeah.
So most of the examples I'm giving, the ones I just gave, I would say that's direct church hurt. Right. It's someone in leadership has made a decision or said something or done something that directly harmed an individual. Right. But there's also something that I would call indirect church hurt. And that's when leadership at a church makes a decision that has this secondary effect on people that were not directly involved. So for example, a friend of mine, again, recently, it's so funny, I have so many stories up late, but he said he does not go to my congregation, but he said that his church recently announced an affair between the preacher and one of the administrative assistants, which that's always devastating. It's never good. It's awful. But what made this complex is that this actually happened 18 months ago, but leadership at the time just covered it under the rug and didn't want to talk about it because they thought that was a good thing at the time. But then they realized later, wow, we probably should have been honest at the beginning. Well, because of that 18-month lag, my friend was so hurt because he's involved and he's sitting on committees and he's serving the church. And then he just feels like this sense of betrayal that why wouldn't leadership tell us about that? And so he just has a lot of hurt. So, but I would categorize that as indirect hurt. He's not the one that was directly involved in the affair, but because the church didn't communicate, he does feel hurt. So those are a few terms: irritation, hurt, indirect. That might be helpful as we talk about it.
I don't know why, but when you said irritations, I just started thinking about the differences in my head. What do you think the most profound, or like, maybe that's the wrong word. What do you think the most, like the irritation that we see the most as ministers, that people think it's church hurt, but it's really irritation? I've got one in my mind. Misspellings in the bulletin. This must be like a small church culture, but I have seen some people get outright like, I'm going to leave if we don't start spell checking the bulletin. I'm like, what? Yeah. I'm not trying to make light, but I guess I am kind of making light of it because it's sometimes it's silly. It is silly, but that's the people business.
I guess 2 for 2 of churches I've been at that have switched from pews to chairs. And that's always a headache and a discussion. And it's just like, it doesn't matter at all, and just stuff like that it's irritating to me, but I know that for some people it's a big deal.
Yeah. So Holdenville, where I was at before I came to League Street, we went from pews to chairs. And to my surprise, there was not one Like not one person came to leadership or myself and said, "Oh, how dare we not have pews?"
Yeah.
And I think it did help that we actually brought a chair in, sat in the back, and we're like, "Hey, go test this chair out."
Yeah.
Told them later why. So maybe ask for forgiveness instead of permission. But no, I was kind of shocked on that one. But yeah, that can be something. Color of the carpet. Oh man, you just never know.
You think it's a stereotype, but it's not. Like that actually is a thing sometimes.
Oh, I know.
Oh man. Well, I mean, a consistent one for me is, Phil, the scripture reference on slide 13 was one verse off. Oh no.
Yeah.
What are we going to do?
We're splitting the church.
Hey, I've got two ministers, an engagement and a youth minister, that if there is like a letter off on my, you're not so bad now at the beginning, but Nathan, our youth guy, will be like, "Josh, you put the wrong scripture up there." I'm like, oh gosh, I better go get down on my hands and knees and but no, I've got a few widow ladies that they're the best, but they're the worst at that. They're like, "Hey, that scripture, I don't know if it was," but and he gets annoyed because I'm like, I'm a copy and paste guy, and he's like, "You can actually use the program will insert the scripture for you." I'm like, no. So,
getting in the weeds there.
Yeah, we're getting way deep.
So Josh is my source of church hurt.
This is true. Yeah, this is true. We're not going to get into that. This is not therapy time with Rick today.
That's another episode.
That's another episode. Hey, Phil, in your experience, what tends to hurt people more, the what happened to them or how the church responded to what happened afterwards? Because we kind of touched on it a little bit there. But what do you think is more hurtful, what happened or how the church responded?
Well, I mean, both can be devastating. Mm-hmm. I don't know which one would be worse. I mean, I guess maybe the initial incident, but boy, when the church doesn't respond well, it makes it way worse. And my personality is such, I've had to really learn to pay attention to this one more, because my personality is more just relax, go with the flow. You're fine. Don't worry about it. But that's actually not the best approach when a member shares something that's truly hurtful. I sat through a training about a year ago. It's really interesting. So the training was based on this idea that a lot of churches have, good security measures in place for kids, whatever, background checks or do stuff for your volunteers, and then similar for teenagers. But then it gets murky in like young adult world. So what's an elder supposed to do if, a 25-year-old girl says, I went on a date with this guy and things happened and I'm not quite sure how I feel about it. Like what? Yeah. I was like, I don't know how would I respond to that? And so in this training, what we learned was, one stat that really stuck out to me, which I remember, is the presenter said that only 5% of reported sexual abuse claims end up being false. I don't know if that was a state thing or a national thing, but mainly just meaning specifically when women share something.
Yep, it's real.
Most often it's actually true. Yep. And so if the listener's not supporting that or investigating that can be very, very harmful. So one of the things that we learned in this seminar was, boy, when members share things, what they do if they're nervous is they'll tell you about 20% of what happened because they want to see how you're going to react.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're dismissive, like, oh yeah, that just happens, you're fine, suck it up, then they shut down. And so we were trained to just, well, tell me more about that and ask more questions. And then if accusations are made or if heavy things come to light, we need to take that seriously and move it up the org chart or get other people involved. Just be very open and honest about some of these things, because when we're dismissive or, oh, you're fine, you'll get over it, that's not a big deal.
Yeah.
On the small front, we're just hurting people. But on the larger front, that's actually how, you can get into legal issues, you can get sued for that. So it's super important to take the claims of members very seriously and ask questions and investigate.
No, you're right. I think elders, I mean, that's what we're going to talk about, because they're the spiritual overseers. They're going to look out for the best interest of the congregation. We would hope. But I think perception is a key here, because there are some times, and this is just me as a minister kind of peeling back the curtain, which we try to do in this podcast to the congregants. There are times where I feel like, as a minister of the church, that the elders are responding well, but the perception to the person is they're not responding well, because elders kind of, this is going to sound blasphemous, and I hope it doesn't, but elders kind of have this role where maybe they kind of experience, in a way, maybe how we treat God, in that, God's not doing it on our timing. And so we tend to project that on our leadership as well. Like, it's not being handled the way that I would do it, or in the manner in which I would do it, or the timing. And that's not always the case. Like, we had a situation here recently where a situation arose and a family got upset, and they perceived that the elders were not handling it correctly. But from where I sat as a guy who sits back and kind of gets a different view than maybe the typical congregant, as you do and Rick does, like, I thought they are handling this well, because the right thing to do is not always go supersonic speed into handling a situation. Sometimes the best thing to do is to slow down, consider all the outcomes, and go about it the way God would want us to, with love, with intent, and getting the story right and the facts right, so that you can make a decision. But because it's not always handled in the speed or the way in which maybe the person who's experiencing this hurt is going through, the perception is that they aren't, but sometimes they are. So I know that's just an experience I've kind of run into as a preacher.
Yeah. So the original question about what hurts more, the hurt or the response.
Yep.
I was thinking about like youth ministry, and when you're counseling a teenager, their crises versus like adult crises are so different. But you can't be like, so what, your girlfriend broke up with you, like, you'll be fine, just get over it, because that problem to them is their world. And and so, like, trying to meet people where they are. And I feel like what you said about just listening, just engaging with them to let them tell their story. And you don't have to necessarily label it or affirm what they're feeling, but not so much that it was hurt or not, but just listen, be proactive. And that's really important.
Yep. I got a question to kind of open Pandora's box a little bit.
Okay.
Who do you think handles this better, adults or teenagers? And I'm not talking about like the real severe cases, but just, the moments of maybe it is irritation, or maybe there is some legit church hurt,
I feel like teenagers are subjected to it more.
Yeah.
And they stick around. Sometimes they're forced to.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've always said, I heard this from somebody, but teenagers and adults struggle with the same problems, but teenagers are honest about it.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's same, like, they'll talk about church hurt and get over it faster than adults will, I feel.
Yeah. I mean, we're all former youth ministers. We probably have a thought in our mind. I would, just being honest, I would tend to, I guess it depends on the person, but I would tend to lean towards our teenagers sometimes just have a little tougher skin.
Resiliency.
Yeah, resiliency. It's probably the word. Yeah. I don't know. That's at least my take on it.
Yeah. Well, let's keep moving. We got a lot of questions here. Is it me or you?
It's you.
All right,
roll
cool.
with it.
What do you think is the difference between legitimate church hurt and just unmet expectations or disagreements? We've kind of touched on this, but I don't know. Let's elaborate a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of this is what we covered, but maybe a different way to say it is that consumerism is a discipleship killer.
Ooh.
And so
I didn't write that down.
Yeah.
When members just get lost in, I need everything to go my way,
Yes.
or it's going to be a bad Sunday.
Yeah.
There's a problem with your walk with Jesus there. The other day it was kind of a heavy week. I had 2 funerals, and I was kind of in the thick of all the grief and just loving people and making phone calls and just in it. And I was in a hallway and a member said hi to me. And I guess we have a new sign out by our building. And she said, "Hey, Phil, by the way, I cannot stand that new sign." And I just I paused for the longest time. I was just dumbfounded because I didn't even have the mental capacity to think about a complaint like that. I was just like, people are dying. Who cares? So, but I've been in her situation before. I'm not trying to say I'm holier than thou, but I do more and more. I've just come to believe that complaining is a habit, and we build these neural pathways, and we're looking for things to go wrong. And we have this righteous indignation when we can tell someone about it. And I just think if Christians are doing something, go serve, teach a kids class, go to the homeless shelter, go visit people in nursing homes. You don't have quite as much energy to complain. So I definitely think some church hurt is simply complaining. Yeah. But then obviously, as we've talked about, 100%, some of it's legit. Oh yeah. Absolutely. We can talk about it. So.
Yeah. All right. I gotta chase the squirrel.
There we go.
I think I'm okay. So maybe I'm slightly autistic. We haven't decided, jury's out, but sometimes I miss these social cues. And in that situation, Phil, somebody in the hallway has a complaint of something minor. Is there ever a place where you either of y'all would address that then and there and be like, not get over it, but try to tactfully encourage them to think differently? Or is it always just going to be move on, process and move on?
Man, that's such a good question. So much of that to me is personality based. I'm more of a Barnabas than a Paul. I think Paul would have lit into her, but I'm more of a Barnabas. So I just I'm a head nodder and yep. Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. You have a good day too. So I'm not the best at, the Matthew 18 kind of stuff. Yeah. Through, how do you work through the confrontation? I'm pretty bad at that. I'm a head nodder. Yeah. What about you guys? How do you guys handle stuff like that?
So I am not a head nodder. I am confrontation. I don't love to maneuver or settle in that tension, but I don't shy away from it. And it is a blessing and a curse. It really is. And as I've gotten older, and I'm still terrible at it, but I have tried to mentally in the moment, just look at the whole picture. Sometimes I succeed, sometimes I fail, but I'm not going to tell you where I was or who it was, but I had this lady and she would come to me every Sunday about something she was complaining about. I mean, it was wearing on me, and I don't know why, because I'm not, I always encourage people, how it is, and how it is. They want to come to the ministers before they go to the eldership, and so I always try to redirect, right? Because it's not that I don't want to help them, but it's I also want to help the elders kind of grow in this too. But every week it was the same, complaining about something different. And finally one week she came up to me and she started complaining. I said, "Can I have a hug?" And man, she just looked at me, and I was shocking to her. I said, "You come to me every week. Do you realize you've never told me good morning? You've never told me good evening. You've never told me it's nice to see you. You never talked to me about our relationship that I desire to have with you. But every time you come up to me, it's a complaint. And I got to be honest, I don't want to know you that way. I want to know you the way that Scripture tells me that we should know each other." She never complained to me again. I mean, she gave me a hug. There was a little, how people get a little emotional and their little lip starts to quiver. But that was it. She never did that. And every time she would see me, she would give me a hug or ask me how my week was going. But it took a lot of time for me to get the courage for that, which was always weird to me because I'm not the one that I usually can just be like, "Hey, don't do that." What are we trying to accomplish here? And I tend to have a rough edge that way, but yeah, just I don't see it as standing up to her, but it was more of a reframing of her, Romans 12, changing the way that you think moment for her. Yeah. And wow, it just totally kind of changed who she was. And I still love her to this day. She's an amazing woman. I know that if I called her today, she would be there. It totally changed our relationship. And she's no longer seen as this woman who complains all the time. It was just amazing.
Interesting.
So,
Man.
but it was tough for some reason. I don't know. I was kind of scared of her, I guess.
Yeah. I think I'm probably just the head nodder as well.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I was trying to think back, and I haven't fielded a lot of complaints, and I wonder if it's because
Probably.
I just like nod my head and then completely flush it from my mind, where I can't even recall them. But I don't know, or I just haven't had any.
Yeah.
Does that mean I'm just that good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't know.
I will say this as like an extroverted guy. I do desire what you guys have. Like I do look at guys that are more of the head nodder, and I know that you guys I have caused myself, because of my kind of outgoingness, a lot of headaches that I could have probably avoided had I just nodded and walked away. But then there's been times, like I just said, where it's been successful. So I just got to figure out how to.
Yeah.
Now this is turning into therapy time with Josh.
Hey.
No, I don't like it.
All right, I got another question here. I don't think this is on the list, but it's in the same kind of conversation. Do we ever play the Uno reverse card? Kind of what you're saying, like you're hurt. Do you realize how you're hurting me? Like, I don't know. Like, I feel that, and I don't know if I'm just. This is my passive aggressive way of talking about it on the podcast instead of to people in face to face. But it's like, like you said, we care so much about the church. We invest so much. It's like our baby, And so when someone says something critical, it hurts us. Yeah. And I mean, talking about burning out as the overall theme kind of our podcast, that's something that takes gas out of the tank.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, it's something we need to do to make the church better. And sometimes there's very good feedback that comes from people, but I don't know. What are y'all's thoughts? Like, how do we communicate our own pain when we are interacting with church people with complaints? Yeah.
Phil, you got any thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's so real. So my thoughts would be more for the audience, if any ministers are listening, but every minister goes through that, goes through their own version of, I guess you could call it church hurt. I certainly have.
Yeah.
And one thing that I think a lot about is contextualizing the influence of the voice. So on my worst days, what I end up doing is I give great weight to people that are lobbing grenades from the top row of the stadium that don't know me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have to kind of pray my way through that and think, okay, they have no idea really what's going on in my life. They just took a cheap shot. Deep breath. What is my wife, my kids, the elders close to me, my friends, what is their view? And then that can be very reorienting, is just to give the proper weight to the proper voices.
Yeah. That's good.
And then I do have a very few people, mentor or two, an elder that I shared, like, hey, someone said this and this is awful and really hurt. And I've had to do some of that even lately.
Yeah.
So you got to have someone to talk to.
Yeah.
I've made it. I don't share with the church very much about that.
Yeah.
No.
I don't know if I don't know. Maybe, there might be a reason to do that, but I've not done much sharing with the church about their hurt towards me.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it's usually isolated.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, then, like, even if we did, though, how would they take it? They'd be like, here's the complaining minister,
Yeah.
They do the Uno reverse on us at that point, I think,
Yeah.
I mean, it really, like, I think in just little small brief moments, you guys tell me if you agree or disagree, I think it's like reading the audience, kind of, Phil touched on that, like reading your audience, knowing who you can have those moments with or who you can talk to. But, yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the person. I mean, I think a lot of times, like you mentioned the story about how the elders waited 18 months. Like sometimes, especially in congregations that are smaller, and I've kind of been in both. I grew up in what I call small church culture. And now I'm, people don't realize this, but anything over 250 in the Church of Christ is considered large. I mean, I think I looked the other day and the average attendance in the Church of Christ, there's 11 to 12,000 is like 65. So, but yeah, just knowing your audience, knowing who you can have this moment with. But sometimes I do think leadership gets caught up in, if we handle this we might lose people over it, or that I just don't feel like I've never been able to fully wrap my head around like that's how you could be thinking. Like if we do talk about this, we might lose people, but the word, like the rebuking word that people are terrified of, like there is a time where I believe that you have those conversations. Now, that doesn't mean you go all out, you kind of rebuke in the way that we probably think, like just all over them and but with love, you can, if you love somebody, you're going to have tough conversations with them. I think.
Yep. It's true.
And I do love people. And when they're messing up, I want to be like, hey, brother, sister, I love you. And I want them to do the same with me. Like if they see me out acting a fool, then hey, I had someone the other day that was just I didn't do anything crazy, but hey, just remember you're the minister, right? You're the, continuing to kind of keep that bar level for me. But yeah, I think when you love somebody, you would be willing to have a tough conversation with. You're not gonna, yeah, I don't know. Sorry, I went off the rails.
No,
I think there's a privilege in that. There, imagine someone that is in the ivory tower just, writing a blog.
Yeah.
And has no connection with the people. They don't have the privilege of having difficult conversations with people that might disagree. So there's actually a way to think about difficult conversations with members as this incredible opportunity to lean into the body of Christ, and then to model for that person. Well, this is actually what it looks like to not slander the other and to be calm, and to apologize even like that. What a great way I always think about that when people are mad at me, just, okay, how can I model what Christ would want to happen here? And it's hard. It still hurts. But it's a better, it helps me just to think that this is a great opportunity to lean into the church.
Oh yeah. And if we're honest, we have people that, this is kind of my personality, but I hope that you like me but if you don't like me, I hope it's for, a valid reason. I would hope you would come talk to me, but like, if we're all honest, we all have people around us that they're not the biggest fans of us. Not that you need to be a fan of your preacher. I hope you're not, but for me, I'm still going to smile. I'm still going to treat you with the dignity that someone created in the image of God deserves, and just going to shake your hand or give you a fist bump. But I'm not going to treat you any different, But yeah, so
interesting.
Man, yeah, that was.
Thanks for indulging my tangents.
Yeah. So we have two questions here that are kind of the same, but we'll get to the last one here in a little bit. But actually, I want you to ask number 4 because number 5 is kind of my baby.
It's yeah. All right. So for someone who has been deeply hurt by the church, what does a healthy path forward actually look like? Not just spiritually, but practically. Like, how do we make it better?
Yeah.
I think you might, I would encourage the person to start with some discernment on the question of, is this irritation or is this hurt?
Agree.
But if it's legitimate hurt, I think there's several things to do. If that person feels like there's a church leader that they trust enough, I think it's really important to have a face-to-face meeting where you share what happened. And then obviously if you're that church leader, take it very seriously.
Yeah.
And then I think it's really important to, depending on how deep the hurt is, I think counseling's a really good tool. And I would encourage people to go to counseling if that might be helpful. Another thought is that I'm always interested in someone's long-term relationship with Jesus and when this happens. And so I think it's just important to remember that misguided Christians are not the same thing as authentic Christianity. And sometimes we conflate the two. But I mean, honestly, like Jesus himself was the ultimate survivor of church hurt.
Yes.
I mean, the people that put him on the cross were the assembly, the Sanhedrin, shouting, crucify him, crucify him. And yet he still loved the church. And so I think there's a way to actually walk with the risen Jesus through church hurt, and not to just throw him in with the people that hurt you and say, well, Jesus must be bad too. No, I think there's a pathway through it, and he himself would be a great model of that. So we can read, the stories of Peter's reinstatement on the beach or the washing of the feet. Those are powerful passages to read for people hurt by the church. And then maybe on a more practical front, just to, when I'm hurt by church people, that tends to become so big.
Yep.
And I need to remember that that's actually a pretty narrow segment of the church. And there's all these beautiful things happening with
oh man,
whoever, this wonderful teacher that teaches the kids every week, or this great elder's wife that's always made me apple pie, or, it's good to remember the goodness of the church. It's still there. We're skewed when we're hurt.
Yep. Yep.
And then in a cousin to that thought is a very simple idea, but if someone's experiencing church hurt and the source of that church hurt is still there, then it might be really helpful to change up the pattern of like physical patterns of how you're engaging with the parking lot and the hallways and where you sit. I mean, it's amazing that we all are creatures of habit. So we end up doing the exact same things every week. So we talk to the same people, we see the same people. Well, if you just park in a different spot or show up 5 minutes earlier or later, or go to a different bathroom between service and class or whatever, that's actually going to put you into different, people. And so that can actually be really revolutionary for these kinds of things. And then the final thing I would say is simply just be open to the pathway of forgiveness.
Yep.
I don't want to shortchange that. And I would never, when someone's sharing hurt with me, I don't just say, well, Jesus told Peter to forgive his brother 70 times 7. So you should do that too. I never start there, but as time goes, we all know this. Anger it kills us. It's bitterness robs our own soul. And so eventually there needs to be dialogue, conversation, prayer about what might the very first step towards the posture of forgiveness even look like in my context.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, you said something there. I actually wrote down a verse for this one, but Colossians 3:13 says, bear with each other and forgive one another. If any of you have a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave you. So what I read into that verse is exactly what you're talking about. Like, forgiveness has to be the ultimate goal, but in that is going to be the acknowledgement that something wrong happened and then patience in the process. So, there's going to be healing and it's practical, but it's going to have to be some humility, some patience, and forgiveness has to be the goal because, like you said earlier, our ultimate goal is someone's long-term spirituality. But yeah, that's what I thought about right off the bat. So, but
I love that one another, bear with one another.
Yes, I know.
It's such a powerful word. I did a study on the Greek word one time there, and it basically means to put up with.
Yes.
Yes, there are days when we can love one another and serve one another and all that. But some days, like the most authentic expression of my discipleship to Jesus Christ is, I'm going to put up with you. That's about all I can do today. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's so empowering to me. I don't have to just feel great about all people all the time. Some of them are really annoying. Yeah. Okay. I'll put up with you today.
We're just going to have to forgive Miss Gertrude every Sunday.
Oh, Miss
every
Gertrude,
Sunday.
Yeah. That's
inside joke.
Inside joke, not a real person. I'm putting on y'all's hat for a second and thinking like a preacher. Scary thought, first of all. But like, I don't know if church people, if our congregants have a rich enough theology of the church to that's their natural response to forget and move on. I don't know if preaching that is the solution or not. My thought goes to okay, maybe make a video or something, to I don't know, tell a story about it. But I don't know what's would y'all preach something like that?
Just like the way a minister feels? Is that what
No, or a deeper theology of seeing the church as bigger than just yourself, and it's you have it in you to forgive and move on rather than leave the church and go somewhere else or something like that. I don't know. I'm just thinking is that something that the church needs to hear? And if so, would you preach it?
I would think absolutely it's something the church needs. Hopefully we've already been doing that. I would think I know I've had sermons where there was a lot of that in there about, because that's something that I'm I pride myself on being good at, is trying to look at the whole. not just because I'm a minister, but because, that's just the way that it is, we were talking 1 Corinthians 12 in our men's Bible study this last Tuesday that we started here at League Street. And that's part of what Paul is saying on that back half of 1 Corinthians 12 is, we're talking about the body because unity is assumed. This isn't about an individual. This is about the church, right? And so, yeah, I would hope that we're already doing that. I don't know, Phil, what are your thoughts?
I totally agree. I have done that and I will do that.
Yes.
That's part of the calling of a preacher, is to challenge
Absolutely.
Christians to grow up, and it's not going to be your way every week.
Yeah.
My favorite quote on that is the Dietrich Bonhoeffer quote from Life Together, where he says, it's going to be a close paraphrase, but he says something like, the ideal, the one who loves the ideal of church more than church is a destroyer of the latter.
Wow.
And what he means by that is everybody has this vision of what they think church should be.
Yep.
Well, they're going to sing all the songs I like, and I'm going to get called for every volunteer opportunity, and everybody's going to thank me for what I did, and the sermon is going to be exactly the way I want it. That's the ideal.
Yeah.
But when I actually laud that over Gertrude and the random lady who complains about the sign and the person that was kind of hurt to me, I'm actually hurting the church. That we're called to love the messy, broken people, and it's always going to be messy and broken. And part of discipleship is learning to take a deep breath and bear with one another, just like Jesus did.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Good word.
And there is, like, we are going to have to put up with people.
Yeah.
But that's just a small, I think you kind of touched on this earlier, Phil. That's just a small part of, there's so much more positive and more beautiful things happening. Like that. I don't want any listener to feel like that's what we experience every day, because it's not. It's a very small sample size of a life as a minister. So there's much more to be thankful for. And even in those moments, I don't know, I'm just thinking about this, but consider, like, what a gift and a blessing it is that we have a God that said, hey, this is going to be part of loving your brothers and sisters, is sometimes you're just going to have to let them speak and, let them feel heard, and you're going to have to put up with it. But man, what a stewardship we have there. I don't know. I was just kind of thinking on that, but you have a follow up?
No,
that's good.
I'm listening.
Phil, that was good stuff, man. That was really good stuff. Okay. So here is the question that I'm sure will take us down the path of chasing a squirrel or into the weeds. But me and Rick, I'm going to preface this by saying we've talked about this quite a bit, because I don't know if you can tell, I know our watchers and listeners can, but Phil, I'm sure you can tell who's good cop and who's bad cop sometimes now. But I believe personally fake church hurt exists. And so that's what I want to talk about. Have you seen what some would call fake church hurt, where it's less about real harm and more about the offense or the disagreement or not getting their way, which we've touched on? And how do you separate real hurt from hurt that's not real? Now, we've danced all around this, but I wanted to say the words fake church hurt today because I do think it exists. So I'm going to let you take that away, and I'm just going to sit back and enjoy this one.
Well, I don't know if I have any new thought, but definitely fake church hurt is real, I think.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of discernment on, how to differentiate between the two. Like, my kid didn't get a line in the puppet show. That's fake church hurt. I didn't get a call to be a small group leader. That's fake church hurt. Like, there's easy ones like that, but then some of the messy middle is like, I don't know. And so I guess I probably err on the side of treating it like it's real, at least at the beginning, and then just asking lots of questions and I'm not sure if I know how to tell the difference.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think it's only through. I agree with you. In the very beginning, you have to treat it real because you don't. There's no way of knowing really. So then the important piece for me becomes conversation through listening. Like we've done this a while. I'm going. You're 20 years. I'm going on 18. Rick, how many years you been doing?
This will be 12th.
12th year. We've all done this long enough that after a few questions or moments of conversation, we kind of, most of the time, now they're, and I'm not going to say every time, but most of the time we can start to, okay, this isn't exactly what they think that it is. So then I think it's up to us to start. I'm really big into the word reframing right now. I think it's because I'm doing a master's in leadership and I got 2 weeks, hallelujah, and I'm done. But it's up to us to, because we are, trying to set this standard theologically or spiritually. I think in some way it's up to us to start the conversation kind of going a 180 and kind of reframing them maybe to what it might actually be. Does that make sense? So I think conversation is probably the most important piece there. And I don't want to say investigating because I don't know that's in some way we are, but one, it's just a really good opportunity for conversation and then for the reframing to take place. Like, and not for me, like this is how I study with people and this is how I talk with people. I don't want them to ever think, oh man, Josh said this when really it was God's word. And I don't want them to ever say, well, Josh told me to do this when I want them to see that it was God's word and the influence of the Spirit that kind of turned them the opposite way, right? So I want them through conversation to start thinking, wait, this may not be what I thought it was in the beginning. Like getting them, I don't know. Does that make sense to you guys? I don't know.
Yeah. I definitely think we are starting to like repeat ourselves, say some of the same things, which has been great. We said a lot of good things. I'll say this again, I guess, but just it's real hurt to them, whether it's, something we can label as real or not. Even someone's in my seat, that's a big deal for them for some reason. And so, yeah, like you guys have said, having more conversations, I think there's a place for like the shepherding, discipling conversations to say, hey, I'm sorry that happened. Don't you think it's good that a visitor's sitting here? I don't know, some sort of reframing it, like you guys are saying. We're saying the same things, I think, at this point, but yeah, I'm always cautious to say, oh, it's not real hurt. And like I feel like it's really easy for us to look at the irritation. I love that phrase, the church irritation, and then the stuff that makes the news that's really bad. But I think living in the land in the middle is where it gets a lot harder. Yeah. And so for me, I would try to, I think, err on empathy. But like I said, I can't really process times that people have, well, maybe there's our people who talk to me about stuff that I listen to, but I don't know. I'm thinking out loud now.
You just have to be ministerial. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Another variable is the question of how, to what extent is this disgruntled person affecting the larger body with this complaint?
Yeah.
And so if it's an isolated, she really doesn't say anything to anybody else. She just complains about this to me once a month. Okay. But there are situations where someone's church hurt starts to bubble out from their own life and it starts to affect others. I actually think that's impetus for leadership to be a little more assertive.
Yes.
We had an example of this last week. There's a member that has this really strange, odd personal situation that he just keeps bringing up all the time, and kind of his axe to grind in Bible class, prayer request, in the hallways, and whether he's right or wrong about it, the details don't really matter, but people are just tired of hearing about it.
Yeah.
And so 2 elders and a staff member pulled him aside last week and just said, you're going to have to stop talking about this with members because other people are talking about it and it's not good for the church. And if you need to say something, you can come to us.
Yeah.
But they had to get really assertive. And I appreciate that because it was harmful to the body at large. So I think that's a really important question to ask is, to what extent is this person's hurt or complaint affecting the larger body?
Yeah, that is a good question.
What if it's someone that's left? Someone that's left the congregation and then they go out and they're still projecting their perceived hurt onto others. What's the course of action then? I don't know.
I think, yeah, I mean, you leave the 99, go after the one.
That's true.
But at the same time, wow, mixing up a saying of Jesus with a modern parable or phrase of you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Like, what a weird smorgasbord there. But so, like, sometimes people don't want reconciliation and they just want to move on. And so I think you can extend the olive branch, try to make peace. You know, what does Paul say? Be at peace with everyone as much as it's possible with you. But that doesn't mean that they'll make peace. And so, but yeah, that's a hard one.
Yeah. What's weird? Go ahead, Phil.
Well, when people leave, we're a large church. People are in and out all the time, which is sad. But we tend to, once they leave, not engage because there's just so much to be done with this block.
Yep.
Another. This is kudos to the elders. One thing they really committed to is, so when members behave badly online, they do not engage those members online.
Yes.
What they will do, they've done this multiple times, is they pull a face-to-face meeting. Hey, just so you know what you're writing on Facebook, other members are really starting to talk about it. And I think you want to watch what you're saying there. But they're doing it face-to-face. Because, boy, that's a tricky one. When members are stirring up controversy online, that's really hard to know what to do as shepherds. So I appreciate the face-to-face on that one.
Yep. You know, I was sitting there thinking about two interactions that Christ had. Nicodemus in John 3 and then Matthew 19, the rich young ruler. The face-to-face happens and Christ shares, with them, and then they walk away and Christ doesn't run after them. He doesn't go beg them. He doesn't try to reiterate. At that point, it's up to them. And so I think that's a good example that the church can follow. Like, we share our peace, we have the face-to-face interaction, and then we leave it up to them. And they either walk away for good or they go back and they reprocess the conversation and then they come back to the church. But I do think that's a good precedent that Christ set in those instances where, like you said, the face-to-face happened, but then it's up to them at that point. But yeah, I don't know. I was thinking about that.
My brain is catching up. There's so many good little nuggets of truth in there and good words.
Yeah. So,
Phil, thanks for being with us today, man. Do you have any other wisdom to drop on us or anything else you want to say?
I don't. Thanks for having me on. Great conversation. Super important topic. I'm glad you guys are bringing it up.
And it's probably something we could keep talking about, but hopefully you take one little thing from today. That's all we want. And whether you're a minister, an elder, or a congregant, this is for everybody. But man, Phil, I am so thankful for you. And I was telling someone the other day, and I promise I did not mean this in a way that is taking advantage of you, but I was like, the guy never tells me no. and I'm just like, that's so humbling to me to you're always willing to help in any way that you can. And right now, I don't know if you know this, but you're more popular at League Street than I am, because people saw you speak over there at Winterfest, and one of my elders was there, and he came back and he's like, man, there's this Phil guy from Memorial Road, and of course he loves Stephen too, and he was like, man, I wish there was a way we could get him to League Street. And I was like, I could probably work it out. We'll see. And but I know how busy you are, so it means a lot to me that you've taken the time to do this, and then you're going to be coming here in August, and but so I'm excited, and so thank you for being that way, because I know.
Yeah, I'm excited too. It's all about connection.
Yeah, I know.
I love connecting.
Oh, me too. I'm a relational guy, so But thank you. That from the bottom of my heart, it really means a lot that you've, been able to say yes to me these times. So.
Absolutely.
But brother, hey, thank you so much. We're glad that you came on. And if you're in the Oklahoma City area, close to Memorial Road, you need a church family, you need to go Memorial Road, hear this guy and listen to him share his heart and watch the Spirit work through him. So incredible. And but thank you, man. We really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right. We're signing out. We'll catch you next time on the Burning Out Bush. See you later.
And with that, we've come to the end of another fiery episode of Burning Out Bush. We hope today's discussion sparked some thoughts and maybe even a little bit of inspiration for you. Before you go tend to your own metaphorical bushfire, we've got a few small requests. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit that subscribe or follow button on your podcast platform of choice. It ensures you never miss a spark from us. Also, a 5-star review goes a long way in helping other folks find our little corner of the podcast world. Take a moment to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can follow the latest flare-ups and announcements by following us on social media. Find us on all platforms by searching for Burning Out Bush Podcast. Do you have a burning secret, a professional meltdown, or a story about truly hitting rock bottom that you want to share? Well, we want to hear it. Fill out our totally anonymous form and your story might be featured in a future segment where we read and discuss listener-submitted workplace woes and career cataclysms. You can find the form at our website, burningoutbush.com. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you next time when we fire up a whole new conversation on Burning Out Bush.